You're listening to the Courageous Pivot podcast. This is a space where transformation begins and possibilities unfold from the heart. Whether you're standing at a crossroads or seeking clarity on when to trust your deepest instincts and take that life-changing leap, you're in exactly the right place. Get ready to unlock the courage, wisdom, and passion to turn challenge into opportunity. Your journey starts now. Welcome back to The Courageous Pivot, the podcast where we explore bold, heart-led changes in work, life, and everything in between, especially when they make no logical sense but feel deeply right. I'm your host, Meghan Telpner, and again, I'm so grateful to have you here with me today. If you've been following along on this journey, you know we've been diving deep into what it really means to make courageous pivots. Those moments when your heart calls you to realign with who you're becoming, even when everything looks successful from the outside. We've talked about recognizing the whisper, tuning into your heart's wisdom, sitting in the unknown, and even the sacred art of letting go. You've also heard from some of my friends who've been featured guests, and I have loads more great conversations to roll out for you. But today we're addressing what I believe has been an elephant in the room, the question that keeps more people stuck in misalignment than perhaps any other: money. This is the episode where we get honest about the often and very real fear of financial instability when pivoting. You may think that this topic pertains primarily to people who want to change careers, but it's a lot more than that. It also pertains to those of you who want to change relationships, geographic location, take on more unknowns, or simply live with a greater sense of choice and freedom. We are going to explore the very real relationship between money and freedom and examine the hidden costs of staying stuck. And I'm going to share some practical frameworks for making pivots financially sustainable. Here's what I've learned through my own pivots and in conversations with countless others. Money is rarely the real barrier to change, but our stories about money, those can keep us trapped for decades. In October of 2024, I released my course, Money Mastery. I've been thinking about this offering for 5 years since I had successfully managed to achieve full financial freedom, meaning I no longer had to work for my money. I had planned financially that the money I had saved and invested was now working well enough for me that it more than covered my comfortable cost of living. What was interesting about this course was the resistance-based comments that came up from prospective clients. People were saying that they're not good at math or that their spouse or partner handles it, or the most common, I'm afraid to find out. Money, like health, is something everyone has to take personal responsibility for. There is so much empowerment and freedom in knowing how it all works, like truly understanding it. I also go deep into this in my conversation with Sean Croxton in episode 7. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, that will be your next move after this one. So let's dive into the money story that keeps us stuck. I'll start with a confession. When I was contemplating stepping back from my business, scaling it all down in 2023, the money conversation consumed more mental energy than it probably deserved. To be clear, I had planned for this freedom of choice for more than a decade and made extremely thoughtful decisions personally and business-wise to be able to support this financial freedom goal. There were sacrifices, there was a lot of learning. I invested in experts. I did a deep dive. This was important to me, so I made the time to understand it. Now, that I was successful at achieving this on the timeline I'd planned for still remains rather unreal to me, even now. Back in 2023, walking away from a 7-figure business looked financially insane. And everyone around me seemed eager to remind me of this. Comments like, "But your business is doing so well," or "Do you know how hard it is to build what you've built?" or "You're insane not to try and sell this." Yes, all true. And even though I had planned forever for an early retirement, that didn't make turning off the earning faucet any easier. There is a security that comes, at least for me, in knowing there was a steady inflow of money. Nevertheless, these questions felt heavy because they tapped into something primal, our survival instincts. Money represents safety, security, and options. And when we're contemplating a pivot, it can feel like we're about to jump off a financial cliff. And I do not want anyone to do that. You do have to have some understanding and preparations in place, which is what I want to guide you through today. And what I discovered in guiding people through money mastery, which remains available, by the way, is that most of our money fears aren't actually about money. They're about worth, identity, control, and what we think money will give us that we don't believe we can create any other way. And I myself am also guilty of this. I also learned that most people have absolutely no idea when enough is actually enough. So there is a constant yearning for more, a fear of scarcity, no matter what you're earning in your household. Before we dive into the practical aspects of managing money through a pivot, I want to get honest about what our current, quote, financial security is actually costing us. Staying in misalignment also has a price tag, and it's usually much higher than you realize. And this is the math no one wants to do, let alone think about. Let's start with the obvious costs of working in a way that doesn't align with who you are. What are the actual, quantifiable, practical costs of living and working out of alignment? Well, first we can talk about a wardrobe and appearance maintenance for a role that doesn't actually reflect who you are. There could be daily lunches out because you're too drained to meal prep, or just to keep up socially with the work environment you're in. There could be gas, parking, transit costs for commuting to a job that you do not love. There could be the retail therapy shopping that happens when you're trying to fill the void of unfulfillment, that instant gratification, that shot of dopamine. There could be higher healthcare costs and stress-related health issues. There's a premium you pay for convenience because you have no time or energy, like making meals, dining out, ordering groceries, those sorts of things. And of course, there could be childcare costs that eat up a significant portion of your income. And then, of course, there's the hidden costs, the opportunity cost of not pursuing work that truly energizes you. There's a mental energy drain that affects every other aspect of your life. There could be the cost of modeling for your children that work should be endured rather than enjoyed. Imagine your children being able to see you excited about the work you have the privilege to get to do every day. And this alone could simply be a micro pivot in how you look at what you're currently doing. There could be relationships that suffer because you're constantly stressed about work or just don't have time or need to rebuild your energy in your off time to be able to sustain it during your work hours. There's the dreams and projects that remain forever on the someday list. This is the idea that you're sacrificing what you want to do over what you have to do all the time. And there's a part of yourself that slowly dies from not being expressed. It might sound dramatic, but it's real and true. And these examples are just costs associated with a work pivot, but they can also apply to relationships, to living somewhere where you've always lived, even if it doesn't align anymore. It can apply to a lot. And all of this is before you factor in what I call the misalignment tax, the life tax, and it's a premium that we pay in all areas of life when we're living out of integrity with ourselves. We become taxed humans, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It thereby also becomes important to understand the definition of financial success. One of the most liberating pieces of information you can have is to understand your true, real, and accurate cost of living. What does your life cost? Without this, you'll have no idea what you need to be earning weekly, monthly, or annually to live the life you want to be living. You will also have no concept of what you're spending to fill the void, or what you actually need to be saving, investing, and earning with compounding interest to feel secure when it's time to make those big life pivots or ultimately retire in the traditional sense. Not long ago, I was at an event talking with someone who has been hustling in their seemingly really successful business for nearly 2 decades. Year-over-year growth, nationwide reach, all those things. He's about 10 years older than me with 2 older children. And when I told him I'd retired, he sort of laughed and said, "But how do you know when enough's enough?" And I straight up said, "You figure it out." As part of my own financial planning, I started to ask both sides of the same questions. For example, how much money do I need to feel secure? But also, what does security actually feel like in my life? I would ask, what are the most effective and profitable aspects of my business? And also, how can I create more value in ways that align with who I am? And instead of being afraid that I might not be able to afford things, I also got exquisitely clear on my core values to know for certain What aspects of my current lifestyle actually bring me joy? And I keep saying me and I, but this was a family thing. I went through this with my husband so that we were both on the same page through every step of this process. We had to be for this to work. Essentially, we worked out what is worth affording, what is worth exchanging our time and money for, knowing how much time it takes us to earn that amount. The expansive questioning led to some surprising discoveries. When my clients in Money Mastery started asking similar questions, but in a much more closely guided way, they discovered that many of the things they thought they, quote, needed were actually compensations for the challenges of a misalignment in life. Expensive dinners out were because they were too exhausted to cook. The shopping sprees were because they needed something to look forward to. The premium services because they felt like they, quote, deserved it after enduring work that was draining. Now, I want to ground this in with a concrete example I share in the Money Mastery course. The first thing I do is I ask the clients in this course to determine their actual hourly rate. Some people know it because they actually work on an hourly rate basis. However, there's still deductions. So the idea is to understand how many hours you work a year divided by your take-home pay after taxes and deductions. So this applies to everyone. And this is the fun kind of math everyone should take a moment to do. Now, let's do an example. The average tax rate in Canada is 43%. Gulp. And assuming someone is working a 40-hour work week 50 weeks out of the year. So if we have a household income, say, of $140,000, after the 43% tax rate, this works out to net approximately $40 an hour. Now, this might surprise you, and this is also above the household income earning. This helps put into perspective where that $40 household income goes. If you're sharing this, splitting it with a partner, that means you're each earning $20 an hour. Those $400 designer label jeans, which I did try on and was like, what am I thinking? I am not getting these. I did find them on Poshmark for about a quarter of the price and then didn't buy them at all. But $400 at $20 an hour is 20 hours of your time for those jeans. Or in your household, that's you and your partner working 10 hours to spend that $400. Is it worth it? And the reality is that when you start living in alignment, your relationship with money will often simplify. You need less external stimulation because you have more internal satisfaction. You make better decisions because you're not operating from a place of depletion. Of course, in my course, we go much deeper into how to organize bank accounts and all these things. But then there's also this aspect of the energy of money. Here's where we need to talk about something that might sound a bit woo-woo, but has profound practical implications. And this is the energetic relationship between money and alignment. Kyle Cease, who's a former comedian and pivoted to become a coach, talks about this beautifully in his work. He has a great documentary on money. And he talks about how money flows more easily when we're being authentic versions of ourselves rather than performing versions of who we think we should be. I've witnessed this in my own life and in the lives of countless entrepreneurs I know. When you're doing work that doesn't align with who you are, making money often requires enormous effort. You're swimming upstream, constantly pushing, forcing, trying to make something work that isn't quite right, always padding those offers with bonuses and discounts, pushing launch after launch of the new best thing. But when you're in alignment, when your work is an expression of who you authentically are, money tends to flow with much more ease. There is a frequency to abundance. It may not necessarily mean that you're earning more money, though often that's the case, but there's easier money that comes from joy rather than struggle. I wasn't going to share this story, but in this moment, I feel like I'm going to. And I recall a certain day, I don't know the year, potentially 2015, 2016, when I realized that I was on to the next level of what I was growing, that this retirement dream was fully within my grasp. And it was the day that our 3-month payment plan was ending. It was mid-July. Everyone on my team happened to be on holidays. And I remember sitting at my computer on this Friday, watching the sales continuously roll in. And I realized that I was experiencing my very first 6-figure day. It was that day, my company generated more than $100,000. At this time, it was me and 2, maybe 3 other staff members. And it felt joyful. That was one of the easiest selling seasons we'd had. And I don't believe that that is a coincidence. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that you don't still work hard or that everything becomes effortless. It means your effort is sustainable because it's fueled by authentic energy rather than willpower alone. I'm not going to tell you to envision money flowing in and just leave you there. I do have magical powers, but they're not there yet. I want to share a little planning framework to help make your pivots more financially sustainable, to give you a real understanding of what this takes. So it's time to get practical. I believe deeply in following your heart and trusting the process, and I also believe in being smart about it and pulling out a calculator to have actual quantifiable objectives. So this is a step 1, 2, let me see, step 4, a 4-step approach, okay? So the first step is that you are going to do an honest assessment. First, get clear on your real financial situation versus your feared financial situation or imagined surplus, as the case may be. I'm going to create 2 budgets. Budgets, is that an evil, nasty word in your life? Don't stress it. Consider it a ticket to freedom. The first is your current reality budget, what you actually need to cover your essential expenses. This isn't your lifestyle expenses. This is your essentials, your mortgage or your rent or your food or your gas or the things you actually need money for and need to live on. And then you can create your pivot budget, what you could live on comfortably if you simplified and focused on only what truly matters. Now, most people are shocked to discover the gap between these two numbers. Often the essential amount is 40 to 60% less than what you think you need, and that a lot of money is being wasted every month. This money is, if you're still working, in exchange for your time. You gave up your time for all of those extra things that now might feel a little less value rich. All of this, plus helpful spreadsheets and step-by-step instructions, is part of money mastery. Now, step 2 is the bridge strategy. Instead of thinking about pivots as an all or nothing leap, consider bridging this process. You could have the side hustle bridge, where you start building aligned work into your life alongside your current work. Basically, once you know what you need to live on, start making it happen through means that is aligned for you. There's the gradual reduction bridge. Slowly reduce hours or responsibility in your current work while building new work. And this doesn't just have to be about changing your work. It could be about buffering your earnings so that you can make other kinds of changes like moving. There's the sabbatical bridge. You might want to take planned time off to explore and experiment before making any permanent changes. There's the freelance bridge, where you could transition some work into freelance so that you have a little more freedom and flexibility. And of course, there's the micro pivots, little experiments in living on less, in living elsewhere, working remotely, trying out the pivot, the change without taking on a massive financial burden. And step 3 is building a safety net. I like to think of it as, the freedom wings. Yeah, that sounded like a really bad, like maxi pad name from the 80s. Anyway, yes, you should have some money saved before making a major pivot. But here's what most financial advice gets wrong, in my opinion. The amount you need isn't fixed. It depends on your bridge strategy, your risk tolerance, and your ability to generate income quickly. So it might not be that you need a solid 6 months of money, your entire cost of living of 6 months saved and ready to spend. What if you just need, 3 to 6 months so that you feel a little more secure? What if you consider that you can still have multiple potential income streams while you're in this bridging process? And it's also good to have a clear plan for at least your first 90 days post-pivot. And step 4 is to move into an investment mindset. Reframe your pivot from giving up money or giving up income or giving up security to investing in your future potential, whether it's earning potential or a lifestyle potential. When you're doing work that aligns with you, living somewhere that aligns with who you are, in a relationship that aligns with who you are, you often find life becomes more easy. Work-wise, maybe you're more efficient and more effective. Maybe you're attracting opportunities more easily. Maybe you could command higher prices for your authentic value or experience less burnout and fewer health issues in your lifestyle. What if it's simply that you are modeling possibility for others, which in and of itself creates unexpected opportunities, introductions, experiences that add more richness to your life? That also has a tremendous value. As we've talked about so many times on this show, there's also the trust factor. This is the part that can't be quantified, but is perhaps most important. Trust. Not blind faith, but earned trust based on the evidence you've been collecting about your capabilities through all those little micro pivots and immunity to change experiments, all these things we've already gone through. Now think about the hardest thing you've ever done, the biggest challenge you've ever overcome, or maybe your biggest win. Have that in your mind for a moment. Now, congratulations! You can do hard things. There's your proof. This might be hard too, but if you really want it, if it's in your heart, it is absolutely worth it. Every time you've navigated a challenge in your life, you've built evidence that you can figure things out. Every time you've created something from nothing, whether it's a meal, a solution to a problem, or a moment of beauty in your day, you've demonstrated your creative capacity. The people I know who make successful pivots aren't necessarily the ones with the most money in the bank. You've met many of these people on this show, and you will continue to. They're the ones who trust their ability to create value, solve problems, adapt to changing circumstances, and remain in alignment with their heart. Many of them are also the ones who braved looking at the reality of their numbers, their spending habits, and are willing to do the work to set themselves free, or willing to live with less. From firsthand experience, when you approach money from a place as a tool of freedom and not something you are enslaved to, any small sacrifice you make for a future life of greater security or freedom no longer feels like sacrifices. You are instead quietly hatching a plan and putting actions in place to build something so wildly beautiful. You are creating your own permission slip. You are building trust. This trust is not built overnight. It's built through those small acts of courage, through keeping promises to yourself, through practicing resourcefulness in low-stakes situations, those micro pivots I've talked about. Now, I have an exercise outlined for you in the show notes. I'm not going to read through it because it's not really fun to listen to, but I highly, highly recommend doing this as your starting place. I also have a 1-hour financial freedom presentation. It's called, 5 Ways to Feel Financially Empowered Today, something like that. That will also be linked in the show notes. All of this is available on my Substack. Just search Courageous Pivot or Meghan Telpner, or go to fun.meghantelpner.com and click on the podcast link. What I really want to get across in this episode is that there is a deeper truth about money and freedom, and this needs to be understood. True financial freedom isn't about having enough money to do whatever you want, though that could be part of it, but it's not going to be enough to get you there. Think about it as needing so little external validation and stimulation that your money becomes a tool rather than your master. When you're living in alignment with who you are, your needs often simplify. When you're doing work that energizes rather than drains you, you need less recovery time, fewer distractions, less compensation for misery. And again, this applies to being in alignment in any aspect of your life. This doesn't mean you'll make less money, though it could, but many also find that when they're in alignment, because they're operating from their strengths rather than trying to force themselves into ill-fitting roles, they do earn more. When you're in alignment in all other aspects of your life, you may find that you're more successful in the work you're already doing. It also means that your relationship with money becomes healthier, more sustainable, and less fear-based. Money isn't evil, and we're too often told that it is. And those with money aren't necessarily evil. Often it's greed that's the problem, not having wealth. So consider that building wealth is actually a source for positive prosperity, where you can give back to our world in an entirely different way from an entirely different place. So I want you to consider the money and pivot practice. This is a powerful exercise to shift your relationship with money and pivoting. And if you only take one thing from this episode, consider it the cost of being misaligned. So here's a little bonus exercise in addition to what I've shared with you in the show notes. I want you to first calculate the actual financial cost of staying in misalignment. This includes obvious costs like buying clothes, commuting, stress shopping, meals out, convenience, luxuries, but also the hidden costs: health, energy, connection with others, time and space to do what resonates in your heart. and compare this to the actual cost of what making that change would look like. Yes, this is work. Yes, you got to write some things down. Do it. We only have this one precious life, this one precious day. It's not worth wasting. And any of you who have seen a loved one go through a health challenge, or maybe you have personally, that is one of the clearest ways to realign with this. We've had guests who have had near-death experiences, 2 of them, in fact. I don't know if y'all have heard from both of them by this time. Nothing centers you more than realizing how precious this life is. Let's not waste it by being stuck by our own fear that might be based on things that aren't even real or that can effortlessly be overcome. The goal isn't to eliminate all financial concerns. It's to move from fear-based money decisions to trust-based money and life decisions. You are making the decision to let money support your alignment rather than prevent it. So the question, but what about the money, is valid and important. We need to think about this. Financial security matters, and being smart about money is part of being responsible to yourself and your loved ones. But don't let the money question become the reason you stay in misalignment forever. Instead, let it be the catalyst for getting creative, building bridges, and developing a more sophisticated relationship with both money and risk. The biggest financial risk isn't making a change. It's staying stuck in a circumstance that slowly drains your life force until you have nothing left to give. Your energy, creativity, and aliveness are your greatest assets. Protect them at least as carefully as you protect your bank account. I want to thank you for being here with me today. If this episode resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you shared it with someone who's letting money fears keep them stuck in misalignment. Or if you have a spouse or partner or child or someone you share your life with who's obsessed with the money over living their life, maybe the exercises here will be helpful for them. For show notes, resources, and the detailed money pivot exercise, go to the Courageous Pivot on Substack or find the podcast link on fun.meghantelpner.com. And I have Money Mastery available to you at 30% off. You'll find the link and the discount code in the show notes. Remember, you're not choosing between financial security and following your heart. You're choosing between fear-based security and trust-based security. Choose trust. Your future self and the potential you have to bring to the world will thank you. And you might also see a few shifts in your relationship with money and your bank account. Until next time, keep listening to your heart, trust your resourcefulness, and know that the money will figure itself out when you're brave enough to address what's really going on and to be who you really are. I look forward to seeing you next time on The Courageous Pivot. Enjoy the rest of your day.